This event happened to me back when I was 20. I was heading to my aunt's house, where I gave lessons to my younger cousins each week. I was a student back then, and it happened in the winter when it got dark after 5 PM. I was walking back to the train. I lived quite a few stations away from my home. At that time, it was around 6 PM, and it was really dark and cold outside. I remember being quite tired that day, so I didn't pay much attention to the train I was boarding. As soon as the train arrived at the platform, I jumped inside. It was really busy, so I had to stand for quite some time, and that didn't help with how tired I was. After a while, I spotted a free seat. I moved as fast as I could to sit down, and I let out a huge sigh that attracted the attention of people around me. I was a little embarrassed by it, so I just looked at my phone and I didn't pay much attention to others around me. At some point, I noticed the guy in front of me looking at me really intensely. I was so tired, I didn't give it much thought and just continued watching videos on my phone. A few stops later, the train driver informed us that it was the last stop. I had my headphones in, so I didn't hear the announcement properly, but I had concluded I needed to stay on the train. I didn't notice I was actually on the wrong train. So while everyone departed, I switched seats to go somewhere with no one beside me, near the window. When the train started moving again, the man that was looking at me earlier went and sat right in front of me. I was so focused on my episode, I didn't pay much attention to it, but it was really strange because the whole carriage was empty and there were loads of empty seats where he could have sat. The train started moving again, and I was finally happy to be on the move. But then, as some stations passed, I noticed something odd. The stations were the ones I already passed before. In fact, the train was going back to the direction of my aunt's house and not where I lived. I was annoyed, but I laughed at myself because it was the first time I made such a mistake. I started looking around me, and I saw the man that sat before me. He was also looking confused while switching his gaze from me and the windows. I laughed and gave him a smile, because I thought he also got the wrong direction. He was on the same train for a long time, but he didn't smile back at all. He stared right at me and seemed very angry. I remember getting this chilling feeling at this moment, and my senses finally woke me up to make me realise something was wrong. I stopped the video and started thinking. I had two options. The first one was to stop at the next station and take the train that will get me back home. That was the most logical option, but I don't know why, something in my gut told me that I should be wary of the man in front of me. I decided to stay on the train and see if he would get off before me. I stayed on board for at least 4 stations, but he didn't move at all. Instead, he seemed to get a lot more confused and angry as time went on. He was also staring at me while switching seats at each station, as if he was waiting to see where I would get off. The way he was looking at me was really scary, so I tried to avoid his gaze as much as possible, so he wouldn't think that I noticed him. He eventually sat down opposite me again and started brushing his leg against mine, trying to pretend it's because of the movement of the train. But it was not natural at all, it was deliberate. The train was not crowded, and he had plenty of other seats. This carried on for a while, and after some time it was getting really awkward. Even when I changed position and moved away from his legs, he would eventually move and do it again. It annoyed me, and after ignoring this for a while, I looked straight at him, and then I knew I was in trouble. He was looking at me with a big smile on his face, as if the situation amused him. I started to panic, and when the train stops again at the next station, I jumped out of my seat heading to the exit, but he followed me. I was really scared, and I didn't know what to do. I really didn't want him to follow me home, because I lived in a really secluded place. I was thinking, and then I got an idea. I got off the train, but stayed on the platform and walked alongside of the train. He was still following me, but I tried to remain calm. Then when I heard the sound of the train starting to depart, I jumped inside the carriage again. It was just before the train left, so the doors locked shortly afterwards, and he couldn't get on. I saw him looking at the doors in shock, and then he looked at me with a vengeful expression. I went to sit down and kept looking at him to see what he would do. He seemed so angry, I was scared he would try and force his way back on. The train finally started moving, and it was gradually getting away from the platform, but he kept looking at me with furious eyes. When the train finally left the station, I was so relieved. I stayed on board for a few stations and finally got off. I changed and took the right train to go home. I was looking behind me the whole time, and I ran home as fast as I could. When I was back home, I realised what had just happened. That event was a real change for me. I was really carefree when I took the train or the subway, but since that time, I've started being a lot more cautious of my surroundings, especially when going home at night.